Hello, my name is Edward L. Oriole. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and a certified alcohol and drug counselor at the Lighthouse Emotional Wellness Center. Some of the clients that I see are individuals, children, men and women, that are dealing with emotional unwellness. Now, by that I mean depression, anxiety, phobias, fears, adjusting to new situations, children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and of course, addictions. Addictions to alcohol, addictions to substance abuse, addictions to pornography, addictions to bad relationships, addictions to the internet, addictions to shopping. I joined the Air Force when I was 17. I had the benefit of good parenting, who both parents, their only goal in life was to be good parents. So they wanted me to achieve all that I could achieve. So I joined the Air Force. I was 4 years in the United States Air Force and 2 years in active reserve. When I was released from the Air Force, I was only 21, I joined the Chicago Police Department. Now, with the Chicago Police Department for the first 14 years, I was in uniform on the north side, and I rode with the same partner who we were lifelong friends before, during, and afterwards. After I passed the detective examination, I was assigned to the Hostage Barricade Terrorist Unit, which has two components. One is the Special Weapons and Tactic, which I wasn't in, to the negotiating section, which I was in. Our job was to go into situations that were in stalemate and bring them to a conclusion where no one was harmed. I'm a single parent. I had full custody of my daughter since she was 11 weeks old, and I'm very happy about that. It's my biggest achievement. Whenever I feel tired, out of sorts, I think about that. She is happily married, has been married now for more than 20 years, and I have two grandchildren, also well-adjusted. That occurred just recently. I had a young man that came in for kind of a vague feeling of emotional unwellness. He went through a series of emotional instability with romantic relationships and emotional instability with his parents and his sisters. He couldn't understand why he had the best of intentions, but the outcome was always the same. And that outcome was always a good deal of anxiety and a good deal of depression. We had a very strong therapeutic alliance, which means that I trusted him to tell me the truth and he trusted me for my objectivity. One day, I went to the whiteboard and I drew out the tenets of this cognitive behavioral therapy model, which is REBT. I showed him his activating events always led to the same chronic, emotional, dysfunctional outcomes, and that was always depression and anxiety. I said, do you see the connection here? He did. I said, do you think there's anything that sits between that? He says, no, it's the way I always am. I said, no, there is something that sits between that. That's my training tells me that there's something that you have neglected out of the habitual activating event leading to the same emotional consequences. Now he was curious. Now I knew I was making headway with him. I said, that's your belief system. I said, tell me what your belief system is. He says, well, I never really think about that. I says, well, whatever it is what fuels the same chronic dysfunctional emotional consequences that you suffer from. So what does that tell you, young man? What should you do about the belief system if it always leads to these negative consequences? Well, he's a bright young man. He says, well, I guess I have to change my belief system. I said, what are we going to change it from and what are we going to change it to? He didn't know. I said, we're going to change it from an illogical belief system to a logical belief system. And after a while, not too long, he was able to think about the way that he thinks, and always reject the illogical and accept the logical. The consequences change. Those consequences that had heretofore always been anxiety and depression were a sense of confidence that he could deal with his environment. Well, of course, addictions. Addictions, I always look to see if there's what the origin of them is, and I've often found that that's rooted in attachment. But also emotional unwellness, which often takes the form of depression, anxiety, fear, adjusting to a new situation, children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, children that are not developing because they're finding themselves distracted too much, children that they cannot achieve their potential in school because of all of the distractions. Well, the training, of course, was as an undergrad at Northwestern University with a psychology major, but I also took a French minor because French language, French culture, French history is my way of self-care. Immediately afterwards, I was accepted in Northwestern University's graduate school with a degree in counseling psychology. That was very intense. There was only 23 people, and it was so intense that I lived on the campus for 3 years so I could focus completely on achieving the credentials that I needed to achieve. Also, I'm trained as a certified alcohol and drug counselor. Now, that requires a good deal of supervision and a good deal of outside training that I have to do on my own, certified education units. And I got a good deal of training from that, and certainly in my internship at the residential facility. This was a residential facility that the 40 boys that lived there year-round were juvenile sex offenders. That's a crucible for emotional dysregulation and behavioral problems. That's when I found out that not only do I want to be a good therapist, I have the temperament to be a good therapist. I like working at the Lighthouse for a couple of salient reasons. Let's make it 3. I like working at the Lighthouse because of the peer review. The staff were always open to discuss different parts of the therapy services that we're providing, and also because of the supervision that I get from Dr. Ray and Reverend Jean, and also because of the staff, the support staff, which makes my job a lot easier and I could focus on clinical issues. My training and my experience tells me that the way you work with families is that a family is a system of moving parts. One person cannot be taken out of the system and worked with and then placed back in the system and expect the family system to change very much. So the way we work at the Lighthouse with families is that we examine what parts of the family are contributing to wholeness, contributing to development, what parts of the family are contributing to wholeness, and what parts need to be adjusted. This often means that the family has to be treated individually and together. Now think of that. Everyone in the family is seeing a therapist. Everyone is dealing with their own issues and the issues that pertain to the rest of the family. So they deal individually and they deal with together. That's very effective. I gave you a background on my parents, and they always insisted that myself and my 2 brothers reach our fullest potential. The Army uses that expression often, be all that you can be. That's what they taught us, and that's what I tried to achieve. I didn't know how I was going to achieve it, but I always wanted to be the best that I could be. I tried very hard to do that. That gives me my sense of purpose. The Chicago Police Department put me in a sort of petri dish about what are the origins of people's poor behavior, sometimes terrible behavior, sometimes criminal behavior. It piqued my curiosity. So I wanted to be a therapist after I left the police department, but again, remember, that's only half of it. I had to determine, outside of the classroom, working in internships and working at the Lighthouse, whether or not I was temperamentally suited to be a therapist. When I first came to work here, Dr. Ray told me, this is when you learn how to be a good therapist, and he was absolutely right. What I would say we provide at the Lighthouse for someone that's considering therapy is I can promise you this in the sense that I've seen this happen time and time again without fail. We'll provide for you a non-judgmental atmosphere. We'll provide for you an objective atmosphere. And we'll provide for you, we'll give you our best efforts to restore you to emotional wellness. My name is Edward L. Oriole. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and a certified alcohol and drug counselor at the Lighthouse Emotional Wellness in Schaumburg, Illinois.